What's going on, everybody? I'm your host, Ben Balian, back with another episode of the Sports Pod. And today I'm going to talk about the New York Knicks because they are firing on all cylinders over this past week or so, beating the Grizzlies, beating the Rockets in a Jalen Brunson classic, beating the Kings by a lot of points. I'll get into all of it on the other side of the intro. Hit it.
DiVincenzo a three. Bang! Bang! Got the wall. He jumps. It's gone. He did it. He did it. Pete Alonso with the most memorable home run of his career.
All right, getting into the episode, and I'm just going to start with Jalen Brunson, the captain, El Capitan, Jalen Brunson, and what he did last night against the Houston Rockets. Because that was one of those games where Jalen said, I'm not letting my team lose this game. I'm going to go out there, and I'm going to do everything it takes to win this basketball game. I don't care if it's putting up 10 assists to go along with 40 points, where if you're putting up that stat line, you could probably score 50, 55 points on the off of those 10 assists. So, Jalen Brunson sacrificed for the team. He sacrificed to win a game that it felt like the Knicks kind of needed to win. It felt like a game that would be very pivotal if they win. Because going into the trade deadline week, the game was played on a Monday night here. In the trade deadline week, trade deadline it's Tuesday. It's 2 days away. You gotta keep going right now. You gotta do it right now. Here's the time. You're 33-17. Finish out this stretch before the deadline fast. You play the Raptors. I don't know who they play after that. Then you got your trade deadline acquisitions, whoever it might be. And it might be a quiet trade deadline. It might be. That's a possibility that I've started to come to terms with. The Knicks might not go out and make a big splash. They're not going to go out there and get Jimmy Butler. They're not going to go out and get Kevin Durant, who's become available now. The other two big guys with Zach LaVine and De'Aaron Fox, they're already off the board. So you're not going to get either of those guys. It might be a Chris Boucher, a Gershon Yabusele. That might be the trade deadline acquisition. And then you also bank on Mitch coming back. And that's the other thing I want to hit on. Mitch got cleared for contact just yesterday on Monday. Mitch, Cat, and Huck Porty, and Precious. Those four. Huck Porty's been getting minutes the last 2 games now. I would love for that to continue. He's proved that he can compete in the NBA. Let's see. Against the Rockets, rather. In 8 minutes, he had 2 boards, a block. And that was really it. But in prior experiences and prior games where he played in garbage time, I think he's shown that he can compete at an NBA level. So I would love to see Huck Porty get minutes and see what we could get out of him and maybe keep him in the playoff rotation, but most likely cut him out. But for Mitchell Robinson, the Knicks potentially getting Mitchell Robinson back soon is so huge for this team. Mitchell Robinson is such a dominant big when he's healthy. When he's healthy is the key to that, though, because he has not been healthy enough. He hasn't been healthy at all. It's been since last year. I don't think he played. He did play a little bit towards the end of the last season, but then he got hurt again. And that's the injury that's kept him out so far this year. Once Mitchell Robinson steps back on the NBA court, the Knicks' depth, the rotation, it's going to extend so much. Because all of a sudden, your starting 5 is set in stone. And the OG Anunoby injury scares me a little bit. But I think they'll be fine. I'd love to let him rest up. I'd love for him to take as much time off as long as the Knicks can stay afloat. Because he's such a key part of this team. And I'd rather have him for the playoffs than have him in January. That's my opinion. I know I can almost guarantee to you that Tom Thibodeau will play OG Anunoby as soon as he is cleared, as soon as he is able to step back on the court. But if it takes an extra half a week, 5 days, whatever it is. Let OG take the extra time. You need him come May if you want to contend for an NBA championship. The other person that you need if you want to contend for an NBA championship that hasn't done it so far this year is Mikal Bridges. And what he did in the month of January, his defensive prowess got him nominated for the Defensive Player of the Month in January. Huge. The Knicks need it. The Knicks love it. It's what we traded for. I mean, you look at the Martin Luther King Day game against the Hawks. That's the one that I'm going to point to. Because what he was able to do on Trae Young in multiple possessions in that game, but most notably forcing him into a 24-second violation, it was huge for the Knicks. I mean, I don't know if the Knicks would have won the game without it. Mikal Bridges, his three-pointer's been getting a little bit more consistent. Still not at the level we need it to be. But whatever you're going to get from him, like let's look at the Rockets game for an example. From three, he's only 2 for 7, 9 for 18 from the field. Scored 22 points. It was a plus 29 though. To go along with 2 blocks and a steal. That's a stat line I will take 10 times out of 10 for Mikal Bridges. If he's putting up those numbers, I think the Knicks are going to be pretty successful. Especially if you get Mitch back, when you get OG Anunoby back. And the thing with Mitch, he could be gone. Him and Jericho Sims could both be gone, and the front court depth of this Knicks roster can completely be gutted. You could have Cat and Precious and Huck Porty. Those be your top 3 bigs. And I think the Knicks are still successful like that. I don't think that's going to really put a burden on the Knicks, except for Cat, who is dealing with an injury right now, and I do want him to get that injury taken care of. If he gets the surgery, the timeline is that he would be ready for the playoffs, which I'm okay with that. I would rather him be ready for the playoffs than some silly regular season games in January where he's not shooting the ball well and he's not playing as well as we need him to be. Because if he's doing this in May, it's not going to be okay. Cat has to step up and Cat has to be better. I don't care if his fingers mess up. I don't care. We brought you here. We traded Julius Randle, who was one of the cornerstones of our franchise, for 4 or 5 years. You have to step up. You have to make not only the decisions that are right for you, but the decision that is right for your team. And I think at this point, it is getting the surgery. And I know it would probably negatively affect the Knicks' spacing. Scratch that. It would definitely negatively affect their spacing. But in the long run, the Knicks would benefit from it. So if I'm Karl-Anthony Towns, I would just get the surgery, get it done with, and then not have to deal with it the rest of the season. Just get it fixed now. Your play is already detriment to the team, especially with your 3-point shooting. Just get the surgery and be done with it. And be back for the playoffs. That's all it is. That's the formula right there. That's all the Knicks, that's what he has to do if the Knicks are going to win, if the Knicks are going to succeed. A player that is helping the Knicks succeed at such a high level, however, is Josh Hart. Josh Hart has done, already having 7 or 8 triple-doubles, I forget the exact number. It's ridiculous. The guy's 6'4", averaging like 12 rebounds a night. Josh Hart is the ultimate hustle man, the nickiest of Knicks. I mean, he's this generation's, I don't know, Anthony Mason, Charles Oakley. That's the type of player he is. And he's succeeding in his role. He's excelling in it. And I want to talk about what he said on the Roommates Pod, what he detailed on his podcast where he had Taylor Rooks on. Josh Hart was talking about his role for the Knicks, and he was talking about how he's a servant. He's not expected to go out there and score 25 points a night like Jalen is. He's not expected to go out there and hit 5 threes like Cat is. He's supposed to go out there, he's supposed to get his rebounds, he's supposed to lock up on defense, and he's supposed to make the right plays for the team. He's not going to be this star player. And I think this year, he's matured a lot, and he's really accepted his role, which is, I'm just going to do what I have to do and let these other guys that I know are better than me, I'm going to let them take control, and I'm going to let them win us basketball games. But I'm going to do everything I can do to also ensure the fact that we're going to win a lot of basketball games. He has stepped up. He's having a career. I guess this new mindset has vaulted a career year because his statistics right now, I mean, they're all but one category of statistics is better than Jaylen Brown, who's an all-star, better than a lot of players. I think he was a fringe all-star. I don't think he should have been an all-star. That's just not how the all-star game works. He would have gotten out there and had 35 rebounds in the all-star game while everybody else is having like 70 points. That's something Josh Hart would have done. But he's not an all-star, and I think that he knows that. And like I said, he's accepted his role, and he's excelled in this other role that will fit him better. And it's helped the Knicks, and it's helped them win. And I will look for it to continue to help them win unless there's some move that shakes everything up at the deadline and Josh gets pushed to the bench or something, or Josh is forced to score more. I don't think there's going to be a big move like that. But I do think that there is going to be some sort of role change, and there is going to be some sort of player that they're going to have to take a step back. I mean, I've talked about OG Anunoby saying he wasn't getting enough shots and that he wasn't getting his touches in. That's going to happen to another player. Because if the Knicks are going to add someone at the deadline, it's going to be an offensive player. Their defenses are very solid already. The defense has been really good. I mean, between Mikal and OG, they're not quite the wing stop we expected, but they definitely are stopping a lot of wings. Karl Anthony Towns has been solid on defense. I mean, I already mentioned Josh Hart, talked about him ad nauseum in this episode. He has been so good. But then off the bench, Cam Payne's high energy. Deuce McBride has always been a very plus defender where that comes into play when Leon Rose is making his rounds close to the trade deadline like he is right now. Leon Rose has to go out and get me a forward who can score the ball. I think that is the Gershon Yabusele. I think that's one of the guys. I know he's not going to be the best scorer, but he could put the ball in the basket and he could play good defense. That is something I would love. If the Knicks could swing a Gershon Yabusele trade, that would work perfectly for my mind. I think he's my top target now that a lot of the other guys are down. I mean, all the stars are gone. I don't think the Knicks were trading for any of those guys. And I'm disregarding Kevin Durant because I highly doubt he will be traded. But we saw it a couple years ago with the Nets. That was a forced trade, though. It doesn't matter. What I'm trying to say is there's not too many. This is a pretty lackluster trade deadline for the Knicks, for any class. And in any team, this is a lackluster trade deadline class. The Knicks just have to find the best fit for themselves, and they have to go out and get that guy. It doesn't matter what it takes. This is supposed to be a year where you're competing for an NBA Finals. This is a year where you're trying to win, where you're trying to hoist the Larry O. Last year, you kind of were. Everybody knew that team wasn't really ready, though. I mean, except for the January team, which is so incredible. I still think they could have won the Finals, but injuries derailed that season. This year, it's no secret the Knicks are looking to go out and looking to win. I mean, adding Mikal Bridges this offseason, re-signing OG Anunoby, trading for Karl Anthony Towns. They are in a spot where it's got to happen this year. It's got to happen next year. Those 2 years with Mikal Bridges, I think that's their window. And then if they could figure out a way to swing the money and re-sign Mikal rather, and re-sign Karl Anthony Towns when his contract expires, then your window expands. But I just don't think they're going to be able to find a way to sign those guys. I don't think that's how it works, and I don't think that's how it will work, because right now they're teetering. They're straddling that first apron, second apron mark. They have about $500,000 in cap space before they hit the second apron. I would look for them to maybe make one smaller trade deadline acquisition and then find someone in the buyout market, whether it's a Chris Duarte, whether it's a Torrey Craig. There was another guy that crossed my mind earlier today. I forget who it was. But there are some guys that are going to be available on the buyout market. That'll be on March 1st is when that starts, that whole buyout season when the contracts are whatever it is. You can sign guys on like the $500,000 deals. That's where the Knicks are going to make their money. I think that's the guy that if you bring him in, he could give you some production and on the offensive end, and you're probably going to get an offensive-minded forward at the deadline. I mean, Chris Boucher doesn't... I would like that. I think he would fit the Knicks really well. I think it's either Chris Boucher or Gershon Yabusele. I think those are the two guys that the Knicks can trade for, and I would be very happy with. But as of right now, they are firing on all cylinders. They're winning all these games. They're winning in convincing fashion. They're putting up a lot of points. This is what you love to see. The Knicks are going to be a good defensive team, like I've mentioned, it feels like a million times in this episode. But what they haven't been able to do on a consistent basis is get the offense going every night. And that's what they were able to do last week. I mean, just looking at the scores for the Knicks over the last week or so. You scored 124 against the Rockets. That's the team that's second in the Western Conference. You scored 112 against the Lakers. All right, that's an average performance. 122 against the Nuggets. Everybody knows that's a really good team. 143 against the Grizzlies and 143 against the Kings. In the Grizzlies game, you won that one by 37 points. That's a pretty good win if you ask me. I mean, I think you ask anyone, that's a really good win. And then in the Kings game, they won by 23. Another really good win. They just had to continue scoring the basketball, getting open looks. I mean, Jalen Brunson is turning into an ultimate point scorer and assist man. I mean, he's averaging 26 and just shy of 8 assists a game. He's been so good. He has been so good, and he is still getting disrespected. I mean, the two all-star starters are great for the Knicks, but it's not good enough. It's not good enough if we're not putting a ring on our finger in the middle of June. That's the goal. That's what it has to be this year. That's what it has to be next year. Hoisting that Larry O'Brien. Right now, I think the Knicks are trending in that direction on the offensive end. The defensive end has to stay solid, and they have to make a good trade deadline. They have to have another good trade deadline. Leon Rose has the past 2 seasons, acquiring OG Bojan Bogdanovic last year, and then acquiring Josh Hart the year before. It was a quiet, but definitely an impactful one the year before. All right, that's going to do it for this episode. If you enjoyed, please leave a comment, like, subscribe, follow, and share it with a friend if you want. Also, make sure to leave me a voicemail with your sports questions and takes at 848-305-8073. Really appreciate it. Also, make sure to check out all the links in the description below for my socials. And most importantly, make sure you keep it locked with the Sports Pod.